Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. My name is Abhijit Bhaduri. I'm the host of this podcast called the Career 3.0 podcast, which really showcases the career journeys of some amazing people. Today's guest is no exception. Let me just quickly introduce myself. I work as a talent strategist to organizations. I also help individuals build their career strategies, and I am an author. My latest book, Career 3.0, showcases how the world of careers is changing. We are moving from a world where people really started off in one particular ecosystem. They had one degree or one skill, and that's what they used throughout their life. That's actually changing to what I define as Career 3.0, where people will use multiple degrees, multiple skills, multiple micro credentials, really to split up their earning from across different kinds of ecosystems. So we are going to live in a very exciting world. But today's guest actually is going to talk to you about something fascinating. And I'm pretty sure that you will learn as much about it as I will, because I know nothing about this space, except for the fact that, let me give you a hint, she is called the godmother of the metaverse. What is that? Wait till you find out. My guest is the one and only Cathy Hackl. Cathy, so good to have you here.
Thanks for having me and inviting me to be on your podcast.
My God, and you've had such an amazing book launch. I'm going to talk to you about all of that, but I'm just really intrigued about this title, Godmother of the Metaverse. First of all, explain what is the metaverse? In simple terms, people like me can understand that. What is it? And what makes you the godmother? What was your career journey like? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so for people that haven't heard the term metaverse or have heard it but don't really understand what it means, or they might have a misconception, really what we're talking about is the successor state to today's mobile internet. So it's the evolution of internet as we know it. It's kind of what comes next, and it's got many different layers to it, and we can definitely get into it once we get into the conversation on spatial computing, because they're definitely related. But yeah, just think about the future way that you're going to engage with content, that you're going to engage with experiences, with games, future way you're going to do your work. So yeah, the metaverse is about virtual shared experiences that happen both in virtual spaces, but also in the physical world. And it is the successor state to today's mobile internet. How did I become the godmother of the metaverse? I mean, that's like a lofty title. I'm definitely not self-appointed, I'll tell you that. There's a really funny story. It actually happened on Twitter, or X, or whatever we want to call it. It used to be Twitter. It was called Twitter when it happened. But my good friend Andrew Schwartz, who works for Nike's Metaverse and Web3 team, was replying to a tweet from Alexis Ohanian, which many people know, obviously, as one of the co-founders of Reddit. He's a billionaire. He's married to Serena Williams. He's a huge name out there. And he was tweeting, asking a question like, which women in Metaverse and Web3 must I follow? And my friend Andrew from Nike replied with a couple names, and then he did one last tweet. And he said, oh, and don't forget Cathy Hackl, she's the godmother of the Metaverse. That's the first time anyone ever used it. People took screenshots. It took on a life of its own. So yeah. Nike, Alexis Ohanian are part of that origin story on the moniker, the godmother of the metaverse. So yeah, I'm godmothering the metaverse and the future of the internet. So
How amazing is that? And when you grew up, what did you study? What did you want to be? What was your definition of a career like? And is it close to what you are doing right now?
Not at all. Definitely lots and twists and turns and reverses on the way to becoming the godmother of the metaverse. I would have never guessed in a million years. So I started off actually, I grew up very internationally. My dad was a diplomat, kind of moved all around the world, lived in a lot of different places, ended up spending a lot of time in Costa Rica, where my parents are from, and where they were, my dad was a diplomat for Costa Rica. And I always thought I was going to be a journalist, like a broadcast journalist. That's what I had my heart set on, because I'm a storyteller, just like you. We're storytellers at heart. So I always thought, TV is my medium. I love video, love telling stories. Actually, that's what I went to school for. initially was broadcast journalism. I mean, I went very, very deep into it. I mean, I worked at ABC News. I worked at a local Fox 5 station. I worked at, CNN, you name it, like literally all the, Animal Planet, Discovery Channel, did all sorts of things, both in front of the camera, behind the camera. So I thought I was going to be a TV reporter, journalist, anchor for the rest of my life, even got nominated for an Emmy, but life had definitely other plans. I ended up working in tech. And I mean, I could not be happier with working in technology.
What made the switch from what you were doing in journalism to tech? Were you writing about technology? And what was that bridge?
I was actually covering politics. I covered a lot of politics in the state of Georgia. I was doing a lot of things with Animal Planet related to animal conservation and animal trafficking. I even worked on an animal cop show where you go and find all these animals that are being abused and then bring them back to life. So, I mean, nothing to do with tech. It was not on the radar. I've always been nerdy and techie, right? So it's always been a part of me, but it wasn't what I was doing. I think the turning point that you're asking about really came about. I got really, really high in the broadcast game. Like I said, I was nominated for an Emmy. It got to a point where I was like, well, what else is there here for me? And I needed a bigger challenge. And I ended up pivoting into public relations, which is a very normal shift for someone from communications. But I had already done a master's in mass communication and economics. So I was really interested in looking more at the business side of the world. So I went into corporate comms. And then through corporate comms, I found my way to technology by chance because I started to get asked to do certain things with an organization called AS 2.0, which is like Women 2.0, which is the Spanish counterpart to Women 2.0 out of Silicon Valley. And yeah, it took on a life of its own. I started going down that rabbit hole, connecting with people in technology. Two things happened: serendipity, fortuity. One of them was many years ago, there was an app that came out during South by Southwest called Meerkat. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
So this is before, for people listening to this, like this is before you could go live on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and like everywhere. Now you can go live anywhere, right? But this is before that. So I was jet lagged from a speaking tour that I had done through Asia and I couldn't sleep. I go into Twitter and I see our friend Carlos Gil posting about this new app that he's testing at South by. And I log in and I see he's doing live TV and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what I used to do in television. So of course I downloaded the app. I was one of the first users. Quickly after Meerkat came something called Periscope, which actually got acquired Twitter. That's why people can go live on Twitter now and X. But I quickly downloaded Periscope, was one of the first users, became a super user, built an amazing event for community, got connected to the folks at Periscope, who later became a part of Twitter. And then that's how my real career with technology started, was in live video, because it was such a natural fit for someone that had done TV. But then here's the other turning point. So there's that turning point, and this is the other turning point that really put me into tech. I was speaking at a conference about live video, and I got invited to put a VR headset on. And I was like very skeptical, just like a lot of people still are. I was like, I don't know if this thing is for me, right? But I put the VR headset on and I went into an experience from many years ago called confinement. It was created by The Guardian. And it puts you in a virtual solitary confinement cell, very small virtual solitary confinement cell. Within minutes, you're in a virtual space, you're walking in someone else's shoes that you never want to walk in. And there was this moment of clarity of like, wow, I feel really bad for people that have to endure solitary confinement. So two things clicked in my brain. First, I felt claustrophobic because it's a place you never want to be, right? No one really wants to ever be in that space, whether it's virtual or physical. So I took the headset off and I said, this is the future of storytelling in some way. I don't even know what it is that I just experienced. And this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So very clear moment, very pivotal moment. I took the headset off and then I said, well, how am I going to do this with no technical skills? I'm a storyteller. I'm good at it, but how do I do this? And then I was very intentional right after that, pivoted really hard into augmented reality, virtual reality, gained some technical skills, connected with the community. And then it's been 10 years, almost 10 years ever since. And I've been building in gaming engines. I've been doing all sorts of things. It's been a crazy ride.
This is really fascinating to see how there are two particular strands, as I noticed, that, one, there is your previous history with television, which, when you look at Periscope or Meerkat, those are the early days of live streaming. And that was a natural bridge that formed. And then, there are things that you did in a very sort of structured way. You learned about VR, you learned about augmented reality, you started hanging around with those people, pick up some of the things. If you had to advise somebody who wants to learn about this space today, what is the right way to go about starting that?
Definitely. I mean, I think the biggest thing is getting over fear, right? Of like, I'm not good enough, or I don't have enough technical skills, or I don't know if I can do this. Start. I mean, there's so many so many ways to start. You don't even know how to like, if you don't know how to code, it's okay. Like, you don't have to work in the coding side. You can do different things within the VR AR industry. Definitely, trying to figure out where you might fit, going to events. There's, for example, the Augmented World Expo, which is really the world's biggest AR and VR event that happens every year. It is summer camp for us in the industry. Going to those types of events and meeting people and understanding who are the members of the community, learning, reading books. I think that's important. And yeah, if you get a chance to get in there, get in the trenches, download Unity and start building something, there's Playmaker and like there's ways that you can create things without knowing how to code as well. The biggest piece of advice is get over that fear, get over that imposter syndrome. If there's a moment to start in the XR industry, it is right now, because this is about to take off. Just like AI has taken off in a crazy way over the last year and a half, 2 years. I mean, I know a lot of people that have been working in AI for years, almost decades, and now is their moment. I think XR, AR, VR, all these sorts of things are about to take off as well. So we're going to need a lot of people in the industry. So get over that fear and kind of come and be a part of it.
So I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of simplifying, so you use 3 terms, XR, AR, and VR. Explain
Yes.
me in layperson's terms.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm like such a tech person, right? I'm just throwing out the jargon and the words, and I'm assuming everyone understands them. So virtual reality, or VR, is fully immersive. It's pretty much something you have to put a headset on, and it transports you into a fully immersive virtual environment.
That's like the Apple Pro.
That's actually like the Meta Quest. It's more like the Meta Quest. The Vision Pro, yes, but not quite, not 100%. But usually you're cut off from reality. Most of the headsets have gotten really good, but that's virtual reality. It's fully immersive. You're in a completely different place. That's like the solitary confinement experience I went into was purely virtual reality. Anywhere I looked up and down to the sides, I was in a virtual space. That's VR. Augmented reality usually adds a digital element in front of your physical world. So Snapchat, anyone that's using Snapchat or Instagram,
correct,
playing Pokemon Go, all these sorts of things, that's augmented reality. Then extended reality, or also people use mixed reality interchangeably. There's a lot of debate there. That's more when these, virtual content becomes a little more spatially aware and understands the physics of the space and in the context of the space that you're in. So for example, the Apple Vision Pro is more mixed reality because it's a spatial computer. So you put the device on, and yes, you can go into a fully immersive environment, but you can still do pass-through, which means I can see the physical world through the cameras of the device, so I can still be present. So if I was wearing the device, which I should have worn it, but if I'm wearing the device, I can still see the screen and can still do this interview while still wearing the device. So yeah, those are like some of the terms that I've thrown out. And spatial computing plays into all of this. The metaverse plays into all of this as well.
When you look at the applications, you sort of wrote a book about the metaverse. That was one of the first ones that I said that I have to read this, because this is such a new subject and I wanted to get educated in that. So I read that. And then, of course, I read it because my friend writes a book, I have to read it. So that's the second reason to read it. Tell us a little about, what that book was about and how it paved the way for your current book, which is about spatial computing. I can see that at the back. I'm going to talk about it, but yes, that's the one. I'm curious, but tell me a little more about the book that you did about the metaverse.
Yeah, so I actually did 2 books. One really early, Navigating the Metaverse. I think the one you read is Into the Metaverse, which was the one I wrote solo. But both of them really wanted to explore deeper. What is the concept of the metaverse? How is it being built? How can you be a part of it? If you're in marketing, communications, business, what is your role in this future state of the internet? So really diving deeper into what are the components, who's building it, why are they building it, how can you be a part of what people are building, what can you build? So really thinking through like, how does this play into your business strategy? So yeah, I mean, it was definitely a lot of writing, very intense analysis. I think the difference between a lot of people that might write some books around, some of these subjects is that they might be writing from theory, and maybe, some strategic foresight there. But with me, I am writing from theory and strategic foresight, but I'm also in the trenches. So by that, I mean, worked, for example, with Ralph Lauren to create their foundational metaverse strategy, worked with Walmart, and I was with them as a metaverse advisor in residence, looking at their, their metaverse strategy, their gaming strategy. I actually introduced them to Roblox. So all these sorts of things, like, with me, you're getting someone that is, maybe thinking from a futuristic standpoint, but also in the trenches, creating and building some of these experiences. So I definitely think, anyone would get some insight from some of the books that I've written.
So you're a futurist and a presentist.
Yeah, definitely very much in the present, but always thinking of the future. And always, I think just like you, I like to tinker with things. I like to work with things, even if it's just a mental workout. But yeah, I'm always in there trying to figure it out, like trying to do really difficult, hard things before anyone else does them. So yeah, like that has played through in all my work, whether it's in the gaming space, whether it's in brain-computer interface experiences. Like I'm always in there trying to push the envelope before anyone else does.
And is this a good time for somebody to think of building a career in this particular space? And if so, what should they do? Should they look at a formal degree? If so, which one? Or should they straight away start playing with something and learn it along the way? What would you advise?
It's a great moment. I think it's a great moment for anyone wanting to get into the many different components of spatial computing. I'll refer to it that way, and we can definitely define it. Yeah, I mean, it's really a huge moment for that. I would say career-wise, like degree-wise, I don't know. I mean, I didn't go to school for this. There was no school degree for it when I was, when I was going to school. So yeah, I mean, if you want to get more into the code and be more on the development side and the technical side, definitely by all means, if you're pursuing computer science or, something in game development, by all means do so. But if you're more thinking about doing the business side of it, I think it's just going deep into some of these spaces, really understanding some of the worlds that are inhabited in these virtual spaces. I think that's critical. That's where I think a lot of the younger generation, they're going to be so comfortable going into working into spatial computing because they already inhabit the Fortnites, the Robloxes, the Call of Duties of the world, right? They're already spending a lot of their time in these virtual spaces. So yeah, my advice is like, if you do want to go more technical, then yeah, I mean, definitely, I think there's career options. But if you're more going to the business side, it's just truly understanding what is this? I mean, it sounds silly, but even like playing Roblox with your kids, so you understand what is happening with the younger generations, how they're spending their money and they're spending their time, and what these gaming spaces mean to them is as simple as things like that. But yeah, and definitely finding good mentors that are going to help you get to where you need to go. I had two really amazing women that I first saw when I was starting, when I had that pivotal moment, right? Of like, I want to do VR for the rest of my life. I saw two women who happened to be Latinas. I'm Latina, so this doesn't normally happen, but I saw two women who were Latinas. Noni de la Peña, who is known as the godmother of virtual reality. I saw her doing the things she was doing with some amazing work, award-winning work that she was doing with VR for social good and journalism. So I looked at her as kind of like one of my North Stars. She's become a friend. I admire her highly. And then there was another woman called Evelyn Mirages, who used to run the virtual reality lab at NASA. Now she's actually she's in the space economy. So not so much doing VR, but once again, another woman that I looked up to, and she became a mentor and a friend. So yeah, find those people that inspire you. Find those North Stars. You can say, I want to be like this person, or I want part of my career to look like this person's. Yours is going to look completely different. Learn from these people. Even if you can't reach out to them as mentors or friends and have that kind of luck, look at what they're doing. Look at how they're doing it. What are the things you can emulate that you can take with you that you can kind of bring into your career? Everyone's career path is going to look completely different.
In my book, Career3.0, I talk about the fact that your career journey is going to be as unique as your fingerprint. No two career journeys are going to be alike. Just in what you said, about how spatial computing is going to emerge, you can either take the route of studying, engineering and sort of taking that formal pathway, or you can just start reading and teaching yourself, which is one of the first skills that I talk about in the book of the 6 skills. The first skill is that how can you teach yourself something that you have not been formally taught? And you are a great example of that, how you've built a career into something that you were not formally taught in. That's wonderful, and it's a really super impressive. I want to switch track and go to your new book and really congratulate you on that. Well, but you hold it up. I want to see the design. It's such a lovely design. I love the colors on it. And so it says Spatial Computing and AI-Driven Business Revolution. You just launched it on NASDAQ. Is that where you launched it?
Yes, I launched it at NASDAQ. I'm good friends with the folks at NASDAQ. And when I was launching the book, they were so gracious to host me. So we actually did the launch in their Studio B. Studio B at the NASDAQ market site is where the IPOs are done. So I wasn't doing an IPO, I was doing a book launch, but it was a lovely event. They hosted me there. The funny thing is, and this is really funny, I found out later that afternoon that Gary Vaynerchuk was launching his book the same day at the NASDAQ market site. He was ringing the closing bell. So I think we both had the same concept and idea, but yeah, we both launched books on the same day at NASDAQ. So for whatever that's worth.
Of course. I mean, Cathy Hackl and Gary Vee both launching their books at the same day, same place. That's what it is. So how delightful is that? Tell me a little about, explain spatial technology, spatial computing. What does it really do, and what do we mean by that, and how is it connected to the metaverse? What's it going to do when we think about AI coming into our lives? Help me decode these three different pieces of information.
Definitely. So let's start with spatial computing. I think it's really important for people to understand that when I talk about spatial computing, and when most people in my industry, in my field, are talking about spatial computing, we're not talking about a single device, like a single piece of hardware, and we're not talking about one single technology. That's important to understand. So people might have heard the term for the first time because Apple announced their Apple Vision Pro, which is their first spatial computer. They use the term spatial computing, but spatial computing isn't about one single device, or they might have seen the term being used interchangeably with mixed reality. Mixed reality is one of the technologies that are part of spatial computing. So spatial computing, in essence, is an evolving 3D-centric form of computing that pretty much blends virtual experiences and virtual content into someone's experience of the physical world. Because of what it's doing, it's about to change human-to-human communication, just like mobile computing did. And it's about to change human-computer interaction because it's going to start expanding computing into everything you can see, touch, know, and feel. When you think about spatial computing, think about how mobile computing, so we went from mainframe computing to personal computing to mobile computing. Computing continues to evolve. It is evolving to spatial computing. So just like mobile computing changed our lives, our work, our careers, our shopping, our fun, everything, this is a moment where we're starting to see a new evolution of computing into spatial computing. So it's pretty much when technology starts to understand our physical world. So for many years, it was us humans adapting to technology, to the phones and the computers, etc. This time around, it's technology adapting to the physical world and understanding us. That's where, when you ask me about AI, what does AI have to do with this moment? What is AI even in the title of the book? It is because this moment that we're in, where everyone's focused on, large language models, on what OpenAI is doing, on what Google I/O is announcing, what Microsoft is doing. This moment that we're in is because this artificial intelligence is slowly starting to understand the physical world. It's slowly starting to have vision. So with spatial computing, at the heart of spatial computing, there's computer vision, artificial intelligence, extended and mixed reality, and many other technologies. But you cannot have spatial computing without AI and computer vision. Here's an example for people that are paying attention to what OpenAI is announcing. When they announce an agent, an AI agent that can see the world, that can tell you what they're seeing, that can help you navigate the world, that is spatial computing in its essence, right? So we would not be arriving at this moment without everything that's happening in AI with large language models and what's coming in AI, which is large vision models, that in essence enable spatial computing to take place.
I want to look at a practical application and how it is going to change different things. So, and I know that your book is really all about that. I want to start with one basic framework, which is, how is this going to change the way people learn? And, what is the implication for higher education when it comes to spatial computing?
I think one of the big promises with spatial computing is that you are going to be able, and this goes for education, it goes for everything else. Right now, our computers, our phones, even if you're wearing some type of glasses that connect to the internet, there's a data layer with ones and zeros that we can't see as humans, right? But it's there. It's all coming out as data. We just can't access that data layer. What you're going to start to see with spatial computing and this new hardware types like spatial computers, AI pins, all these new hardware that's coming in, is that we as humans are going to be able to access that data layer, right? So that data layer, we're not going to see it in ones and zeros, but we're going to see it in the form of holograms, annotations, virtual beings, all this virtual content that's going to come at us. So imagine what that means for education, right? If I'm going to access that data layer, I can walk around, Washington, D.C. or New York or Singapore, wherever, and actually see where things happened or see what happened in this corner in this year. Or, who was the last person that commented on this restaurant? So from an education perspective, from a consumer perspective, it's about to get really interesting. This is critical and scary at the same time, is that with these new devices, with spatial computing, with new hardware types, with AI and computer vision, what you're going to start to see is that everything within eyesight and earshot of you becomes a canvas, which is really exciting from an education standpoint. Imagine that, being able to actually learn about the pyramids of Giza when you're there and seeing that in front of you and understanding like all the different layers. And this is where, this happened. That's from an education standpoint. The flip side, because I am a realist in some ways, is that it also becomes real estate, right? So it's a canvas, great canvas for education, great canvas for opportunities for learning, but it can also become real estate. The physical world starts to become real estate. The air around you becomes real estate. So a great opportunity for education, possibly not so great for bad actors that might want to tap into that. So yeah, I mean, that's if we want to dive deep philosophically into, what is the good and the bad that could come of it.
So how would, if you are an administrator in a higher ed space, what are the possibilities you should be thinking of?
This is really important. I want to say this to anyone listening to this. I am not advocating for you to go and buy an Apple Vision Pro. It's really early. The device is very expensive. It is not a mass consumer product. It really is, in my perspective, a prosumer developer's kit, to be honest. What you do need to start to think about is that as more devices, and you're going to see a Cambrian explosion of new hardware coming from everyone from OpenAI to Microsoft to Google and Meta, Apple. They're all going to continue to bring new devices to you. How does that change your services, your products? So if you're in higher ed, how does that change education? How does that change what you're teaching, how you're teaching, and who you're teaching it to? Because it will change. For anyone out there who says it's not going to change, think about mobile computing. Mobile computing changed the game for higher ed, for education in many ways. If computing is going to keep evolving, I mean, obviously I think most people would agree on that statement. Sure. There is going to be this new computing called spatial computing. How does that change, once again, what you're teaching, who you're teaching it to? What you're teaching, who you're teaching it to, all those sorts of things. So starting to think about that. If there is new hardware, if there is content that's going to be more immersive, if we are going to get access to that data layer, if that data layer becomes a canvas onto the physical world that you can see through a device, how does that change what you're doing? So yeah, I think right now it's more of a thought exercise as things start to ramp up, but you're going to continue to see more smart glasses coming to the market, more AI assistants, more AI pins, more AI in your car, more AI at home. That's all part of the spatial computing.
And what does it mean to the students in terms of how do they spend their time differently while they are in an institution of higher education? What should they be doing differently today?
This is the shift that's going to happen, is that we start to become less passive consumers of technology. So a lot of times education tends to be a little bit passive. You hear something, then you do a test where you click, where you do multiple choice. Or there's an activity there, but it's still kind of like a very much like just repeating things. With spatial computing, you become more of an active participant than the technology. So I could imagine in the future for one of these students, instead of doing a multiple choice test where they're just regurgitating something they learned, they're actually going into a virtual experience and having to almost do like an escape room type of situation where they need to unlock something, or they need to find the solution to this, or they need to go to where this happened in history and show your teacher that you truly read the lesson, right? And you go into the right pyramid of Giza. The right pyramid in Egypt where something happens. So yeah, I think it's going to change a lot of things. I think for the current students out there, especially the younger ones, they're already very much in the gaming space. So they're very comfortable flowing in between virtual and physical worlds. Whereas I think, I'm an older millennial. For millennials and up, it's harder for us to differentiate between the physical and the virtual. Like I hear a lot of people call it like the virtual world and the real world. For the Gen Z generations, and more so for Gen Alpha are the kids of millennials started being born in 2010, still being born. They move seamlessly between virtual and physical. What happens in the virtual world is equally real to them. It does not change. So they're flowing in between these realities. And I think for this younger generation, learning in these more immersive spaces is going to be very comfortable to them. Whereas for an older generation might feel weird, or like, I don't want to try that. I'm used to being sitting in a desk in school. For them, being able to go into these virtual experiences and tapping into that data layer in a new way is going to be so comfortable and so seamless. I mean, this generation, especially Gen Alpha, is growing up in a time where AI is ubiquitous. Spatial computing is just getting started. Gaming is part of their everyday lives. Augmented reality has been around since they were born. So yeah, that does change the game for, these students.
When you look at the different business settings that you've talked about in your book on spatial computing, it's fascinating how you've taken multiple scenarios and really looked at those. Talk to me about one or two sectors that you think are going to see the most amount of shifts and pretty much in the early stages, So I know when you spoke about the metaverse earlier, you talked about fashion becoming one of the early adopters. And, that if you wanted to really take a sneak peek at the future, you would look at fashion. When it comes to spatial computing, what should we be looking at?
I'll give you two examples since you asked for two. One, not as sexy as fashion. And I will talk about fashion because that's like my passion and what I really love. One example is manufacturing, which might not seem as exciting, but you're already seeing, for example, Lockheed Martin used the Microsoft HoloLens, which in essence is a spatial computer, to create their Orion capsule. They found a 90% reduction in labor costs in the creation of the capsule. That's a 90% reduction. Like, that is a huge number that I think people should be paying more attention to. So this is the workers wearing the Microsoft HoloLens, 90% reduction in labor costs. So huge metrics there, right? That paved the way for how this could impact manufacturing and many other sectors. Then you've got fashion, right? You've got fashion where, in my perspective, fashion is about to get reawakened in ways we haven't seen in a while. It's been a little stagnant with innovation. When you start to merge physical and virtual fashion together, that starts to get really interesting, especially when you look at the younger Gen Alpha, what they're spending their money on, what they're buying. They're buying skins, they're buying, they're outfitting themselves in the virtual spaces, they're, decorating their virtual homes. I think fashion's about to change dramatically, and you're already seeing it. You're already seeing it, for example, with Louis Vuitton launching, virtual physical assets, with Tommy Hilfiger going into Roblox, Hugo Boss launching in Roblox, like Ralph Lauren, all these companies doing these sorts of things. And a great example there is, for example, Walmart, they have a new Walmart world. I actually helped build their first world, which was the first time they went into the space and they were testing it. They've now built a second world that is, I think it's Walmart rediscovered. And they just, for example, launched in Roblox physical to virtual commerce. So if I'm in the game, if I'm in their experience, I can actually buy something that arrives at my house. So fashion and commerce are about to change dramatically.
What it means is that we've been in a scenario where, let's say when I was growing up, with your pocket money, or if you earned money, you actually went and bought a book or you bought an ice cream. So that's a physical good that you bought. Whereas later on, when you started entering the gaming space, you could buy a special sword or a magical power in a game, or you could buy more power or something, or faster car virtually. It stayed inside there. Now what you're saying is the line between the physical world and the virtual world is getting blurred. So you have the virtual world and the physical world having a kind of a crossover moment. So that's really a very, very different opportunity.
Yeah.
And, when you look at healthcare, my first thought is that that is going to change healthcare in a very drastic fashion. What is that going to look like?
Oof. I mean, exponential growth and opportunities for healthcare. I mean, I think as you see, like, for example, there's not enough doctors, right? There's not enough doctors, but what if the doctors could be virtually somewhere else? But, we already have robot surgeries, but imagine that times the 100, right? Where you're going to be able to see your doctor from a virtual space. They're going to be able to see how you're doing. Yeah, I mean, it's going to change that. It's going to change healthcare. I recently did a keynote at Summit at Sea where I was talking about spatial computing, and I did a live demo on stage, which is always nerve-wracking because anything can go wrong.
I know.
But I had, but it went really well. And the experience, the app that I decided to show was Anima Res, which is pretty much one of the things that you can see is a 3D, a very, very authentic, really real 3D model of the heart and how it works. And I was able to pull it, I was seeing it through my device on stage. There was a moment where I'm seeing, I'm wearing the device, and through my device, I'm seeing this model of a heart. People can see that on the screen, right? They can see this heart floating in front of them on the stage. They can't see it because they're not wearing the device, but they can see it on screen. It's right there. And when I got close to the heart and went inside the heart, that's where people went, oh, you could hear that aha moment of, wow, she's actually getting in there. We're seeing what's inside the heart. That was a great moment. So imagine that. Imagine the possibilities for education, for better understanding. I mean, for people to learn, in the medical field, but also for us as patients to better understand what is happening inside our bodies or what a procedure could look like, right? So those sorts of things I think are powerful. There was another moment when I did that live demo where with the Vision Pro, it has a digital crown where you can go from seeing the physical world, from mixed reality to fully immersive VR. So I used the digital crown, and all of a sudden, everything around me became this like desert. It really was like the Atacama Desert or something. But the 3D model of the heart is still in front of me, still beating. I can still manipulate it, can still go in. That was another moment where people were like, Wow. So imagine that. Imagine if you are in healthcare, if you're learning, if you're one of these surgeons who's teaching residents and you need to kind of like get their attention into this physical space so they can be fully, in the operating room practicing. Very powerful. I think healthcare is one of those places where we're going to see obviously immense gains with AI and everything that's happening there. But AI plus spatial computing, you're talking about a whole new level.
And, you already have the ability to have a digital twin of a heart, so you can check the medicine and see what is it going to do to somebody's actual heart, simulate it, and so you avoid any side effects or whatever. You are able to do it in a far more controlled environment. So, yes, the possibilities are fantastic. So, from a teaching point of view, yes, totally. That's what's going to be very exciting. One other example, last example, that what can people do to start exploring some of these possibilities in their own field? What's it going to do for them? How should they go about doing it?
Yeah, start to think about how things evolve. Like if things become more immersive, if computing is expanding into everything you can see, touch, know, and feel, what does that mean for your product? What does that mean for your service? I also feel that everyone's so focused right now on large language models, and rightfully so, because that's the excitement du jour. We're all obsessed with ChatGPT and GPT-4o, but this is going to change. This is going to evolve into more AI-enabled devices, AI-enabled agents. So yeah, I mean, things are about to get really interesting for all of us.
If somebody wants to think about how it could evolve and shape their own career choices. So for example, if I'm in talent management, how do I start to explore that and say, how should I carve out that learning path for myself?
Buying some of these devices, trying them on, testing them, and not the Vision Pro, because the Vision Pro is very expensive. But if you get a chance to use the Meta Quest, things like that I think are important. Thinking about also how new talent, how the younger talent wants to be recruited, wants to be retained, wants to be trained. I've done extensive work with a lot of companies when it comes to training in immersive spaces. As far back as 2016, I was advising UPS with their virtual reality driver training program, because you can train someone to drive in VR without any casualties, right? Without any human casualties, or there are casualties in the virtual space, but that doesn't really affect anyone. So yeah, I think that especially the younger generations, the ones that are gamers, they're going to look to these companies. So, whoever the talent agents are, the talent, managers are, they have to look at this new younger generation. This younger generation is going to look for the companies that hire them, that retain them, that train them to be innovative and to adapt in some ways, right? You can no longer, come to a younger worker and say, here's a PDF, read it. And soon enough, YouTube videos are not going to cut it. So,
and I think the irony of how that change translates into the organizational setting is a lot of the decision makers are people who are not familiar with this technology. So therefore, they don't invest in this technology. And when they talk about not connecting to, let's say, the Gen Z or millennials, I think one of the reasons is because they themselves need to really start talking that language, and having experienced that, that's the only way you can be authentic as you talk about, here is how we can do it. And I still find that so many organizations are so far back when it comes to investing in employee-related pieces, and then they wonder how they are going to attract great talent. You can't, because your workplace is really obsolete. One example I was sharing with one of my clients is, imagine if you got a job offer and you discover that, they are using typewriters. And they say, I think computers is a fad. It's going to go away. So we still use typewriters. It's really that world that we are living in. So that's fascinating. I want to switch to you personally. What are you reading now? How do you go about spending your day? How do you keep yourself updated? Because there's so much happening in your space.
I'm a voracious consumer of content. I'm a voracious creator of content. This is my 5th book. But I mean, I'm always reading, I'm always learning, always watching new things, trying to also explore outside of my tech field. I'm trying to, right now I'm like really trying to understand chips, everything because of the AI chips, but I also want to better understand how chips work, right? Single core processing, all those sorts of things. So I'm diving deep into that. Really interested in expanding my knowledge of quantum computing. What does that really mean? So yeah, like being curious, reading, asking people questions whenever you have the chance to do so. What am I currently reading? I mean, I've just done my book launch, so I'm a little like read it out. in that sense, but I'm sure I'm going to find a new book pretty soon. But yeah, I'm always consuming information on a constant basis from many different reliable sources, listening to great podcasts. I mean, I have a podcast called Tech Magic where we talk about all the tech news from we're more from a gaming and technology perspective. So yeah, always connecting with folks. I mean, I enjoy your content as well. But yeah, there's so many smart people that are sharing content that might not be specific to your field, but that can broaden your perspective. So yeah, just stay informed, stay connected, try to find those trusted sources, trying to find the people that are the thought leaders, the influencers in that space, and follow what they're doing. Try to see what they're posting about.
And when you think about podcasts, what is your criteria to decide I'm going to listen to only one episode of this, or here is a podcast I'm going to follow and do that? What's your way of segregating it into those buckets?
If the host is having a good time, is asking great questions like you right now, like that to me is one of the things where I'm like, I'm probably going to return. That's important to me. And then for podcasts that are like maybe one or two people or three, it's like, what's the chemistry around them? Like, are they stepping over each other, or are they really allowing for a conversation? Because I think discourse at this moment in time across the world, having smart discourse, allowing people to speak and to talk about their opinions, even if you completely disagree with them, I think is having discourse. That's what I'm looking for mostly when I'm trying to find podcasts to listen to.
Are you more of a person who learns from video or podcasts or books or articles or conversations? Or all of that?
I learn from everything. I would say for retaining data, for retaining information, I think audio and video are really good for me. Video tends to be a really good thing. I come from a video background, right, for doing TV. I mean, I write a lot of books though, so I would say that as well. But definitely video and audio. I think I'm getting definitely a lot more into the audio space. Audio is very intimate. I feel like audio is so incredibly intimate as well. When you're in someone's ear, there's a certain power there that you might not get by seeing them on a flat screen. Once you're in someone's ear, you're in kind of inside their head. And I think there's something powerful and intimate there. So anyone doing audio, I think, is doing really interesting things.
Yeah. That's your dog who's also participating in the podcast, which is wonderful. I'm a dog lover. So
his name's Arthur, and he's always on my podcast because he will bark. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, but because I forgot to invite Arthur to the podcast, so he's sort of reminding me that, okay, I'm also very much a part of it. But I want to, just quickly say thank you very, very much for being here. And once again, can you show us the book, that you've just written? And I'm sure, that's Spatial Computing, an AI-driven business revolution, that's written by Cathy. And wonderful talking to you, Cathy. Wish you the very best. Wish you lots of success. And I think it is such an inspiration to see how you moved your career from, journalism to travel to just being curious, learning about the metaverse, moving seamlessly into spatial computing, all of that. It's truly inspirational. Thank you so very much for being here today. I appreciate it. And inviting people to follow you on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. It's very easy. Just look for her name, and she's done the smart thing on branding. It's Cathy Hackl, one word in all of them. So with that, goodbye and see you again